Hello everyone, I'm Baruffy1322 and in this video I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the in-depth vehicle stats that all goes on behind the scenes that you don't normally see. So if you haven't seen episode 4 of this series, I would suggest going and watching that first, or certainly at least after this video is finished, because it will form the basis of what I'm talking about here. If you do have any questions at the end of this video, episode 4 is probably going to be answering them. But it's basically the idea that there's a lot going on behind the scenes in terms of vehicle performance, and you don't necessarily see all of that in game. And the idea that the stats that you see in terms of the things on the in-game websites and even in the lobby screen in terms of acceleration, braking, traction, speed, those 4 aspects, none of that is really true, and you shouldn't use any of that to determine anything about car performance. So back in episode 4, I introduced a spreadsheet, and this spreadsheet has been used quite a lot by a lot of you guys in terms of trying to figure out what goes into car performance. And it basically contained a lot of information taken directly from the game code. Things like driving force, which is basically engine power, drag coefficients, and clutch ratios, gear ratios, how many gears it has, the maximum velocity that the cars can have, tons and tons of different parameters and attributes to these cars that all go into car performance behind the scenes that you don't necessarily see. Now, that spreadsheet seems to be no longer getting updated. A few people have asked me about it, and the fact that it doesn't contain the cars from the Ill-Gotten Gains Part 2 update, so it seems like that isn't getting updated anymore. So I've decided to basically take it into my own hands and delve into the game code myself and try to provide you guys with the information that you guys are sort of used to from seeing that spreadsheet. So that's basically what this video is going to be about. I'm going to introduce the spreadsheet that I've made for this and walk you through it a little bit, and also talk about a few more interesting aspects to car performance in general that I've found. In episode 5 I talked about the 3 things that go into the actual top speed that you can achieve in a car, and in this video I want to talk a little bit more about the other aspects, including acceleration, braking, traction attributes, and some interesting things that I found by looking at this game code and looking at things in a little bit more detail that may surprise you. So certainly stick around for the end of the video, but I would also suggest watching this in full 1080p and full screen, because I will be showing a few spreadsheets, but I am going to try and zoom in when I'm starting to talk about these more important features. So let's get straight into that bit. So this is the spreadsheet that you guys are probably used to, those of you who've used it. This is what I introduced in episode 4 and I talked about at length. It has all of the different stats for the vehicles that go on behind the scenes, all the different parameters, color-coded in terms of the class of the vehicles as well, and it's all there. Everything that you need is there. I always felt that it was a little bit clunky, it could have been made a bit easier to read, but ultimately it did a job. If you wanted to find the information of a vehicle, it was there and you were able to find it with a bit of effort. So when it came to I realized when people were telling me that this isn't updated anymore, as you can see in the top left, we've got GTA car and bike stats 1.27. We don't have the vehicles in here from the 1.28 update, which was the Ill-Gotten Gains Part 2 update. For example, in the Supers class, the T20 isn't added. It obviously, the spreadsheet is no longer getting updated from whoever made it. So when it came to doing it for myself, I figured I could give it a bit of a different look and perhaps put my own take on it to make it a little bit easier to read and a little bit easier to understand. So my spreadsheet that you guys probably all know about is this one, which is the best fully upgraded cars in GTA. It's got obviously all of the cars, the main attributes, how much they cost, all that kind of stuff, and most importantly the lap time as well, and obviously in terms of combined and also by class. It's got the lap times on. That's what it was mainly for, to give you the lap times of those vehicles so that you could easily see it and you don't have to go through the videos every time that you want to just find where a vehicle places within a class. So I decided to add to this spreadsheet, and by the time that you see this video, these new sheets will have been added to this, and it's all going to be one huge spreadsheet that I'm going to just rename GTA 5 Vehicle Info, and this is what I've decided to add to it. So this is basically the exact equivalent of this. This is obviously it looks completely different, but as you can see, you've got the vehicles, the class and the vehicles here. Then you've got the mass of the vehicles here going down there. And then when you go back to this one, you've got the class, and then you've got the vehicles, then you've got the mass right here. So it's basically a carbon copy. This is taken directly from the game code. This is exactly what you would expect to see if you got the game code yourself. It wouldn't be in as easy to read format as this, and I can actually show you exactly what you would see. This is basically what you see when you delve into the game code. It's just a sea of numbers. You've got value 1, value 2, value 3. It doesn't actually tell you what these numbers mean. You've got all sorts of different things, barracks and barracks 2. You have to figure out which one of those is the right one. Baller and baller 2, for example. Some of them don't even have the full names, as you can see there with carbon is. Obviously that's the carbon is there, but you have to manually do that. So that's for the main game, but then you've also got them for each individual update as well. So this is for the Ill-Gotten Gains Part 2 update. So you've got to bring all that together. You've got to actually put the classes in manually. You've got to show what these numbers actually mean and bring it all together in a readable format. And that's what I've tried to do here. But it is a lot of work. A lot of work has gone into making this spreadsheet. But hopefully it will give you guys the information that you need and really help you guys out. So where does all of this fit in? Now, the one thing that is involved in this spreadsheet that you wouldn't have seen in the original spreadsheet, there's a distinct lack of commercial vehicles, as you can see. It's just compact, coupes, emergency. Some of the vehicles are missing, and some of the vehicles that I tested recently in terms of the extra classes are also missing, and the planes and the boats were also missing as well. Whereas I've included everything in this spreadsheet. You've got the boats at the top, as you can see, commercial. You've got emergency vehicles, helicopters, industrial vehicles. Then the planes are further down as well, as you can see there. But then we've also even got trains. The 3 different trains that are there as well. So you can basically look through everything. Now this doesn't only just include the attributes that you're normally used to in terms of driving force and drag and all that kind of stuff, because that makes no sense for things like planes, boats and helicopters. They all have sub-handling data. So if you scroll all the way along, you can see here for the planes, there's this sub-handling data column. Oh, it's gone right to the top. Okay, I'll do the boats. For the boats, you can see this sub-handling data column, and it's basically a C boat handling data, C submarine handling data. And if you scroll all the way along, you can see all of that information. So in terms of boat performance, this is the important stuff. This is what it's actually using to determine the difference in performance between the boats. The same is true for the submarines. There's obviously only 2 of them, but that's what this is using. And then the same is true for planes as well, which is here. We've got the helicopters. You've got flying handling data. For example, thrust values, as you can see there. That is basically the same as driving force for cars, but driving force makes no sense when it comes to helicopters and planes because it doesn't use them. And then if you go to planes, obviously different thrust values, all these kind of different values. So I've tried to include everything in as easy to read format as is humanly possible. And then you've also got bike handling data as well, which it's not necessarily as important as the plane handling data to what the planes are. The bike handling data, obviously the bikes do still use the driving force aspects that we are used to for the cars, but there is still extra data there if you are so interested in looking at it. Now, something that you may have also noticed is that as I'm scrolling left and right, this left-hand pane is frozen. So I've done that just to make things a little bit easier to read. So if you're interested in the traction of the cars, you can just scroll along and it's easier to see the different traction values, as you can see there. So obviously careful of highlighting it because it just takes you to the start of the spreadsheet again, as you've seen there. But yeah, that's something that the original one never had. As you can see, if you scroll all the way over to the right, you lose what you're looking at. So that's why it was a little bit clunky, a little bit more difficult to read. And it didn't include all of this sub-handling data as well, that I've done for the planes and the boats and all that kind of stuff. So this is the one that everything is there. It's in an easier to read format. There's physical attributes, transmission attributes, wheel traction attributes, as you can see here. It's got the original meanings, the original names for all of these things as well. For example here, this is called F initial drag coefficient. So if you want to know what that actually means, there is a website that allows you to see that, and I've included the link to that in the spreadsheet. So as you can see, physical attributes, F initial drag coefficient, which basically means the drag coefficient, percentage submerged, the center of mass values, drive bias, all that kind of stuff. It's all here, and this is what I've used as a basis for the spreadsheet in terms of the names of the values. So transmission attributes, then we have wheel traction attributes, then there's suspension attributes. If you go back to the spreadsheet, you can see that along the top, physical attributes, transmission attributes, then we've got wheel traction attributes, suspension attributes, damage attributes, and then there's obviously all the sub-handling data as well, which that website contains all the information that you need. So this is for the hardcore guys. This is for the people who really want to delve deeply into the game code. They want to see every single value that it's possible to see and compare everything that you need to compare. Now, I've also made it as easy to read as possible, so hopefully that will help you guys. As I mentioned, I've made for example, the 3 different police cruisers, I've actually named them. For example, on this, the one thing that I can show you is something like the Muscles class. You've got Gauntlet and Gauntlet 2 there. As you can see, Slam Van 2, Stallion and Stallion 2. That's basically what the game code is calling them. They don't have different names. In the game code, they are denoted as Dominator and Dominator 2. For example, the Sterling GT in the game code is actually called Feltzer 3 for some bizarre reason. But I obviously wanted to make it a little bit easier to read when it came to my own take on this. So instead of Dominator and Dominator 2, we've got Dominator and Dominator Race Car, Slam Van and then Slam Van Lost for the Lost version of the Slam Van, Stallion and Stallion Race Car. Obviously the race car versions are the things that you see in single player on new gen with the stock car races, but all of the information is there, all of the values are there if you are interested in looking at them, and they're in the easiest to read format that I could possibly think of. But in terms of keeping things easy to read and easy to understand, there's also a basic sheet as well. Now this does away with all of the planes, the helicopters, the boats. They aren't really necessary. You couldn't really make an easy sheet out of those because there's all of that sub-handling data that makes sense just for those. So I haven't included those for this. But what I've basically done with this is tried to make this in a way that people are going to understand a lot easier. So I've only included what I believe to be the most important factors for vehicle performance. Now, as it says in this top bar, for the full story, you do need to look at this handling data full sheet. It is going to give you the full story about everything. Don't necessarily think that you can determine car performance by just looking at these values, because there might be something in this main sheet that you just don't see. So it's not giving you the full story, but it's giving you a basic idea of why the cars and the bikes react the way that they do, why one is quicker than another, things like that. So at the top we've got speed, acceleration, braking and traction. So those are the 4 sort of main aspects that you may be used to in terms of car performance, in terms of the lobby screen beforehand. And I've tried to bring the most important aspects to this, and I've also, as you can see, put little notes in as well for anybody who needs it. There's lots of different notes there that give you an idea of what these values mean. It would make no sense to do that for the full sheet because there's just too much stuff, and that's why I've left a link to that main website that gives you all the information. But yeah, for the basic one, I wanted to make it as accessible as possible. So not everything is going to be there, and for example, I've got weight instead of mass, just to make it, little things like that, just to make things a little bit easier to understand for people who may just be starting to get into what these things mean. So way back in episode 5 of this series, we looked at top speed and what was involved in top speed, and it was basically only these 3 values: the engine power, which was the driving force, the drag coefficient, and the maximum speed of the car, which is you'd never actually reach that. So change any one of those 3 values and you change the actual top speed of the car. But these values do also have an effect on overall speed in terms of acceleration as well. But again, I'm just trying to make this as easy as possible to read. So now I'm going to get into sort of talking a little bit more about these values. Now that we've got this easy to read sheet, it's easier to show you some interesting aspects to the car performance. So I'll try to zoom in a little bit so you can see these things a little bit easier. So these are the values that we know: engine power, drag and maximum velocity. Those are the values that I talked about in episode 5 when it comes to top speed. But what about when it comes to acceleration? Well, the weight does seem to have a slight effect. Weight does have an effect in terms of collisions as well. But, you know, in terms of acceleration, the heavier that the car is, the worse it's going to accelerate. But also the drivetrain and the power to each wheel, if it's all-wheel drive, has an effect. You know, all-wheel drive cars do tend to accelerate better than rear-wheel drive cars. And then this value here is the power to the front wheels. So, for example, this vehicle has 50% power going to the front wheels, 50% going to the rear. The number of gears sometimes has an effect as well. But something that's quite important is these 2 values here, well, especially this one, it's the upshift rate, which is basically the higher that the value is here, the quicker that the car will go up the gears and increase its performance. So you want to be changing gear as quick as is humanly possible, because you aren't going to be in the process. When you're in the process of changing a gear, you're not accelerating, you're busy changing a gear. So the quicker that you can get that gear changed, the more time will be spent actually accelerating the car. Now, we've seen from some testing from reliable testers like Shaggy, for example, that the T20 does seem to have a little bit more acceleration and launch off the line than the Zentorno and the Osiris. Now, engine power also goes into acceleration, so does drag into a little bit as well. You know, the acceleration is probably one of the hardest things to nail down, all of the stuff that actually goes into it. But when you look at the T20, the Osiris and the Zentorno, you see that the engine power of the Osiris is 0.36, of the T20 0.365, and the Zentorno 0.354. But the drag of those cars is basically the opposite way around. And I talked about that in the Good Job Rockstar discussion video as well. Certainly in the description as well. Read that if you're really interested in how they've balanced that in terms of top speed, because they do seem to have pretty much exactly the same top speed. But the T20 appears to have slightly better acceleration, at least initially off the line. And when you look into why that might be, because they seem very similar in all other areas to the Osiris and the Zentorno, you can see here the upshift rate of the T20 is 7, whereas for the Osiris and the Zentorno it's only 6. So the T20 actually gets up the gears quicker than the other 2 cars, and that's why it has that initial better launch, because it's not spending as much time changing gear, it's spending more time accelerating as well. So acceleration is probably one of the most important things for car performance in terms of, you know, pulling out of the corners and that kind of stuff. Probably second only to traction. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I've tried to make it sort of in an easy to read format here so you can easily see what might be the reason that one car is quicker than another. But obviously, again, remember that you've got the handling data, the full handling data there as well, and some of these speed values also have an effect on acceleration. So the more interesting ones that I want to talk about are the braking and the traction. Now, we'll come on to the traction in a second. I'm just going to take a drink. We'll come on to the traction. This has been such a rambling video. I don't know how long I've been talking at this point, but I want to just try and get everything in here because I find this really interesting that we've got all of these different values, and I've put a lot of work into making these sheets easy to read. I don't know how many of you are still watching at this point. You might have got bored after the first 5 minutes. If you are still watching, then good on you for sticking around. But this is where it gets most interesting, I would say, because there's in terms of the braking, you've got brake force and then you've got brake bias. So basically, brake force is how good the car brakes, how well the car brakes, how how good its brakes are, essentially. The higher the value, the better its brakes are. In terms of the brake bias, that's how much the front wheels are braking, essentially. How much of the front wheels are doing the work, how much of the rear wheels are doing the work. So as you can see here for this vehicle, 0.55 means that 55% of the braking power, the braking work is done by the front wheels, 45% is done by the rear wheels. So it's not just a case of having one single value for braking and that's it. You know, it's not just a case of the braking being a certain value and that means you have better brakes. There's more that goes into it. And as we'll see, it's not even just braking values that go into how well you brake, it's actually traction values as well. So this is where I got really surprised when I was delving into this and finding out what these values all meant. There are two values for traction. Officially they're called traction max and traction min. Now traction max is actually the cornering grip that you have. The traction that you have when cornering. That's the one that we're probably all used to, the one that we all know. You know, I think that the T20 has slightly more traction than the Osiris, as you can see there, 2.68 to 2.66, as long as the spoiler's actually working. Zentorno, 2.65. The supercars are all very close, obviously, but that's the one that we're all normally used to. That's probably the one that's reported in the lobby screen as well. But the traction min stat is actually talking about straight line grip. So that's grip when you're accelerating and grip when you're braking as well. And I couldn't believe this. I didn't realize that that was actually what it was for. So the traction actually affects how well you brake and how well you accelerate. In terms of if you have a lower straight line grip, the acceleration that you have in terms of wheel spin will be much, much greater. So you want more straight line grip to have less wheel spin off the line, and then you'll get a better launch. I talked about wheel spin in the best launches video in terms, I think that was episode 7. You can go and watch that for more detail about that. But this straight line grip aspect that's in the game code, is programmed in the game code, actually has an effect. And this is why, that like we saw in the previous episode, this is why the T20, when its spoiler was broken, it was worse in a straight line under braking, because it actually took away that straight line grip under braking. So there's actually something in the game that traction is affected by. Now, something that obviously less obvious than just cornering traction as well. So something that I wanted to show you guys, to basically give you guys an example of how this all works together, is the slam van. The slam van is a perfect example of showing what I'm talking about here. So as you can see, the braking force of the slam van is 0.6. Ordinarily, that's not too bad. Now, we all probably know that the slam van has absolutely terrible brakes. It's the same with the brawler. It's got horrible brakes if you aren't braking in the right way. Now, no car on GTA has ABS. There's no car at all that has ABS enabled. You can lock the brakes on quite a few cars, but the cars that you can't lock your brakes on, it's because their straight line grip is so high that you can just put maximum braking force on and it will brake efficiently. That's why this is working. That's why you can actually brake fully with some cars and not have any bad effects. But the slam van definitely isn't one of those. As you can see, 70% of the braking work is done by the front brakes. Now that's a lot. That's a lot of work to put on just the front brakes, because only the rear brakes are doing only 30% of the work. And when you look at this straight line grip aspect, it's 1.25. Now that is one of the lowest in the entire game, which is absolutely crazy how low that is. So I'm going to show an example in a short while of the slam van in terms of braking fully and braking at 50%, because when you're braking at 50%, you actually stop quicker, because when you're braking at 100%, you're basically braking too much, then the car can't handle it. You don't have enough grip. The brakes lock up. You don't have enough grip, and the front brakes are doing too much work to the point where they'll just lose grip, and they just completely lock up, and the front brakes lock up, and then you get much less braking efficiency at that point. Whereas when you're only braking at 50%, you're not putting as much force on the front wheels, on the front brakes. You're using the maximum amount you're using, more of the grip that you have actually available, so you stick to the road better, and then you're able to brake a lot quicker. Now, the one question after that, with this straight line grip aspect, do spoilers increase your braking efficiency? That was the question that I really wanted to get to. Is there something about spoilers that increase not only cornering grip, but straight line grip as well, which would mean that they would increase acceleration a little bit in terms of, you know, getting less wheel spin, and increase braking as well, improve braking, because you've got more grip to play with, basically. And that's what we're going to find out in these next two clips. So first up is the example with the slam van. Now, as you can see, we've got 100% braking on the left, 50% braking on the right. As you're going to see, we brake at exactly the same point. I've synced this up perfectly. When you're braking at 50%, you actually stop quicker than braking at 100%. And that's because when you're braking at 50%, you're using up all of the available grip that you have to stop in a straight line, which is, as we saw, very low, only 1.25. But when you're braking at 100%, you don't have enough grip to stop effectively at that braking force. So your wheels lock up, the front wheels lock up. If you've got stereo speakers or you've got headphones in, you'll be able to hear the much more tire screech on the left hand side, on the left hand earpiece rather than the right hand side, because the front wheels just lock up completely, and you can't stop effectively because you don't have much straight line grip. And as you can see, we stop much quicker in when we're braking at 50%. Now, here's an example with the spoiler and without a spoiler with the Coquette Blackfin. Now, this is slowed down straight away because it's very hard to see. The difference isn't that much, but there is a difference. Now, if you focus on the right hand side, you can see that white line just to the right of the car without the spoiler. That's just in front of us with the spoiler. So it actually does have an effect. When you have a spoiler that you've added in Los Santos Customs, it doesn't just improve your cornering ability, it improves your braking as well, and by extension acceleration, because it improves that straight line grip aspect. So this is another example, just because I did do multiple versions of these tests, I always found the same result. Without the spoiler, it takes you a little bit longer to brake than when you have a spoiler. So when you're increasing the grip, you're not only increasing cornering grip, you're increasing straight line grip as well, which impacts on braking and impacts on acceleration. And that's why, as we saw in the previous episode, the T20, when the spoiler was broken, it didn't brake quite as effectively as it normally does, in addition to losing that cornering ability that it has. So that's it, we're done. I'm not sure how many of you will have stayed to the end of this video. I imagine it isn't many, because it has been really long. These fact-finding videos are normally interesting at all moments. I can imagine that a lot of people would have got bored halfway through this video when I'm explaining all the spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if there aren't many people who actually saw the most interesting part of it, which is what we've just seen in those two clips. But hopefully, for those of you who did stay, you got something out of this. And the spreadsheet is the same spreadsheet as you normally use in terms of my my best lap times. That obviously gets updated as well with the fastest cars, in terms of the new cars that I've tested, you know, the emergency vehicles, the commercial vehicles. That's updated with all of those. And then I am going to be testing planes, helicopters and boats again, and that will be updated with that. So that also now has all of this vehicle information on it, so it's all in one spreadsheet, all in one place where you can get all of the information that you possibly need. Hopefully it will become sort of the one spreadsheet that everybody uses for all of their vehicle information, because it's amazing how much work has gone into that sheet, not only in just getting the values and formatting it in a reasonable way to have it be read, but also when you consider all of the work that's gone into testing all of the vehicles as well. It's crazy how much work has actually gone into getting the values that are in that spreadsheet and, you know, make it in the first place as well. So I do hope that you guys see that spreadsheet, enjoy that spreadsheet, and use it as often to help you with whatever it is that you want to find out. The link is obviously in the description, but for those of you who have it bookmarked already, it's just updated with the new sheets with all the proper vehicle performance aspects in them. So you don't need to change anything, it's just all in that one spreadsheet. Now, thank you so much for all of your support. I know I do put a lot of work into these videos and the spreadsheet and the best fully upgraded cars videos as well, but for those of you who've made it to the end of this video, I do appreciate you doing that, you showing all of your support. I'm going to try and, I should have mentioned this at the start, I'll try and leave some links in the description for you able to skip to important points. I should have mentioned that at the start, but if you do want to show this video to anybody to sort of prove something, you know, how spoilers affect traction and all that kind of stuff, that you can just skip to a certain section of the video. I'll leave the links down below. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you guys get something out of this, and most people might not even be interested, to be honest, but it's just something that I find incredibly interesting, all of these different values that go into car performance. I just really enjoy looking at all this and trying to work out why one car might be quicker than another, and the reasons behind it, and discover things that we didn't necessarily know before, how spoilers now affect braking. I should have made that the title of this video, I guess, but yeah, that would have been better for clicks, but yeah, I try to be as accurate as possible. So yeah, spoilers actually affect braking and acceleration as well, not just traction. They increase traction across the board. The difference is minute, but it is a difference. So spoilers, we always thought spoilers were the most important part in terms of vehicle performance and modifications, but as we found out here, they're even more important than what we initially thought, along with the turbo, I guess you could say, because that does give you a huge increased acceleration, which is probably the second most important. So yeah, if you've got to the end of this video and there's something that you still don't understand, look in the description for the links to, or in fact just check out the playlist, check out the fact finding playlist. I know I say that, fact finding, I know a lot of people think I say fuck finding, but it's completely different the way I say that. So yeah, check out that playlist, because it does have all of the playlist makes more, the series makes more sense as a series, if you like, you know. It's definitely, you need the other videos to have you need all of the other videos to have each video make sense, essentially, and they are as a whole, rather than just individual videos that are going to make sense, because there's just so much information that you have to go through to basically understand everything that I'm talking about in these videos. So thank you so much for watching. Check in the description, everything is in there. That's the last thing I'm going to say. Everything is in there. Leave a like if you enjoyed, share the video around, you know, just anything to support me. I really do appreciate it. I hope you've got to the end of the video. I really appreciate those of you who have. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.